My name is Ellie, and I have been living with my husband Jack in the bustling, but indifferent city of New York for 5 years. The past 5 years have been as uneventful as plain water. Jack is busy with his work as a lawyer all day long, while I have a mediocre clerical job in an advertising company. It was a lazy, sunny afternoon. After finishing the tedious work in the morning, I went to the coffee shop near the office as usual. This coffee shop is a place I visit every day. Its decor is simple but warm, and the air is always filled with the rich aroma of coffee, which makes people feel relaxed. I ordered a latte as usual, found a seat by the window, and idly flipped through my phone. Just then, a familiar voice sounded in my ear. "Ellie? It really is you." I looked up and saw a tall man standing in front of me. He was wearing a well-tailored suit, and the collar of his white shirt was slightly open, revealing his delicate collarbone. His hair was black and shiny, neatly combed to one side, and his features were three-dimensional and deep. His eyes were like deep, dark lakes, with a smile that was both familiar and strange. He was tall and straight, with broad shoulders, giving him an air of reliability. I was momentarily lost in thought, quickly searching my mind for memories of him. Tom. I called out his name tentatively, my heart beating a little faster involuntarily. Yes, the man in front of me was my old friend Tom from university. We had spent many good times together, participating in various club activities and staying up late studying together. Those memories, although they had long passed, were clearly floating in my mind at the moment. He smiled and sat down opposite me. "Long time no see, Ellie. I didn't expect to run into you here." His voice was deep and full of charm, with a hint of familiarity. I tidied my hair a little nervously and forced a smile. Yes, what a coincidence. He started to greet me enthusiastically and chat with me about what he had been up to over the years. I looked at him and listened to his story, as if I were back in those innocent student days. The charm of a mature man shone in his eyes, and it made my heart flutter. I tried to remain calm, but my heart was pounding. I felt overwhelmed by this long-lost feeling. During our conversation, I learned that he had achieved great success in his career over the years and had become an executive at a well-known company. His life seemed glamorous, in stark contrast to my uneventful days. In his presence, I felt inferior and could only talk about my ordinary life. Before I knew it, an hour had passed, and it felt as if we had endless things to talk about. It wasn't until my phone rang and Jack called that I woke up from my dream and realized that I had been chatting with Tom for so long. After hanging up, I told Tom awkwardly that I had to go. He nodded with a smile, and there seemed to be a trace of reluctance in his eyes. "Talk to you again next time, Ellie." I hurriedly said goodbye to him, got up and left the coffee shop, but my heart still couldn't calm down for a long time. Since our unexpected reunion at the coffee shop, my heart has never been completely at peace. From time to time, his deep eyes and warm smile appear in my mind, and memories of those college days keep flooding back. A few days later, Tom messaged me, asking if I wanted to go for a walk at the university we both attended together that weekend. I hesitated for a moment, but finally agreed. The weather was exceptionally sunny that weekend, so I carefully selected a simple yet elegant dress, put on a light layer of makeup, and set off for the agreed meeting place. When I arrived at the school gate, Tom was already waiting there. He looked sunny and handsome in casual jeans and a white t-shirt, with a dark jacket on top. He saw me and immediately gave me a big smile, walking quickly towards me. "You're still as beautiful as ever," he said, and my cheeks flushed slightly at his compliment. We walked side by side into the campus, and the familiar teaching buildings, playgrounds, and libraries came into view one after the other. Tom pointed excitedly at various places and told me about the interesting things that had happened here. "Do you remember? That time we participated in the drama performance of the club. You were so nervous that you forgot your lines, but in the end I improvised and saved the day," he said with a smile, his eyes full of nostalgia. I couldn't help but smile. Of course I remember. I was so nervous at the time that I didn't know what to do with my hands and feet, but luckily I had you. As we walked, we reminisced about those little moments. When we passed by the library, Tom stopped in his tracks. "Do you remember the days when we studied together here?" In order to prepare for the final exam, we often stayed here all day. I nodded, my thoughts drifting back to that sweltering summer. The air conditioning in the library was never very effective, and we sat by the window, sweating as we studied. Sometimes Tom would secretly pass me a candy, and the sweet taste still lingers on my tongue. We sat down again on the bench by the playground. Tom looked at the playground, and a trace of emotion shone in his eyes. Back then, we were full of dreams and passion, and felt that the future held infinite possibilities, he said. Now I think about it, time really has passed by quickly. I looked at him and felt a little emotional myself. Over the years, I have gradually lost myself in a dull life, and those dreams have long been forgotten. Tom, on the other hand, has achieved so much in his career, and his life is full of excitement. During our conversation, I discovered that Tom still knows me in such detail. He remembers my favorite books and music and every dream I have ever spoken of. This made me feel incredibly warm, and at the same time, it made me feel a special kind of emotion towards him. Before I knew it, the sun had set and the afterglow shone on us, enveloping the entire campus in a golden veil. Tom looked at me and said softly, "I really enjoyed reminiscing with you today." I smiled back at him and said, "Me too. It's been a long time since I've been so happy." We got up and left the campus. As we were about to say goodbye, Tom gave me a gentle hug and said, "I look forward to seeing you again." His embrace was warm and strong, and it made the emotions in my heart even stronger. I returned home with mixed feelings, my mind filled with images of the time I spent with Tom. I had no idea where this emotion would lead me. Since that campus reunion, Tom and I have become more and more frequently in touch. Every day, we chat on the phone, from work trivia to life insights, from reminiscing about the past to imagining the future. Every exchange makes me feel closer and closer to him, and that special feeling grows unknowingly. One Friday evening, after a busy week at work, I was about to go home. Tom suddenly sent me a message asking me to go to a new restaurant for dinner. I looked at the invitation on the screen of my phone, and a feeling of anticipation welled up in my heart. After a moment of hesitation, I agreed. After work, I went to the mall to buy a new blouse and carefully retouched my makeup in the bathroom before heading to the restaurant for our date. When I walked into the restaurant, I immediately saw Tom sitting by the window. He was wearing a sharp black suit today, with the collar of his white shirt slightly open to show off his delicate collarbone, and a dark blue tie. When he saw me, he immediately got up, smiled, and came over to me, his eyes full of admiration. "You look really beautiful tonight," he said in a low, gentle voice, which made my heart flutter. We sat down at the table, and the waiter soon brought us the menu. Tom carefully recommended a few signature dishes for me, and I felt exceptionally warm from his thoughtfulness. During dinner, we had a very pleasant chat. Tom told me many interesting stories from his work, and his sense of humor often made me laugh out loud. I also confided in him about some of the troubles I had encountered at work and in my personal life, and he listened patiently, occasionally offering some pertinent advice. As the conversation deepened, the lights in the restaurant gradually dimmed. There was a different kind of emotion in Tom's eyes, and his gaze always fell unconsciously on my face, making me feel a little shy, but I didn't want to look away. He gently reached out his hand and brushed the stray hair from my ear, a natural and intimate gesture. My face instantly turned red, and my heart beat faster uncontrollably. Time seemed to have come to a standstill. Everything around us became blurred, and there was only the two of us left. I could feel his breath and hear my own rapid heartbeat. I knew that our relationship was no longer just that of old friends, and an ambiguous atmosphere quietly filled the air between us. After dinner, Tom insisted on driving me home. In the car, we didn't say a word, and the atmosphere was a little awkward. When we arrived at my building, I was about to get out of the car when Tom suddenly took my hand. His hand was warm and strong. "Ellie, He paused, his eyes full of expectation. I looked at him, my heart filled with mixed emotions, not knowing how to respond. In the end, I gently pulled back my hand, said, "Thank you," to him, and hurriedly got out of the car. Back at home, I sat on the sofa, my mind replaying every moment I spent with Tom tonight. I knew I was in a dangerous situation, but I couldn't control my emotions. I felt both excited and scared, wondering where this ambiguous relationship would lead and how I would face my husband, Jack. Ever since that night at the restaurant, when I had an intimate interaction with Tom, I have been overcome by a complex set of emotions. I tried hard to restrain my growing feelings for Tom, but whenever my phone rang and I saw it was him, I couldn't help but reply immediately. Over the next few days, Tom continued to contact me frequently. Every word and greeting from him was like a gentle hook, drawing me closer and closer. One weekend afternoon, the sky was drizzling with fine rain, and the whole city was enveloped in a hazy, poetic atmosphere. Tom messaged me, saying that he had found a very quiet bookstore and wanted to invite me to go with him. I knew that spending time alone together might make things even more difficult between us, but my desire to be with him won out over my common sense, and I agreed. I put on a light blue trench coat and held an umbrella as I walked to the bookstore we had agreed to meet at. Tom was already waiting at the door, wearing a khaki trench coat. The rain had dampened the tips of his hair, but it made him look even more attractive. He saw me and gave a surprised smile. "I knew you'd come." His voice carried a hint of certainty. We walked into the bookstore, where the air was filled with the faint smell of books and coffee. We strolled between the shelves, occasionally exchanging soft comments about a book. Unconsciously, we walked to the corner of the bookstore, where there were few people and the lighting was dimmer. Tom suddenly leaned in close to me, his body almost touching mine, and I could feel the heat radiating from him. His eyes were full of burning passion, and it made me a little flustered. "Ellie, ever since I first saw you, I found that I still like you as much as I did in college." His voice was low and full of emotion. I wanted to back away and reject him, but my body wouldn't listen. He slowly reached out and gently put his arms around my waist. My heart raced and my breathing became rapid. "Tom, we can't," I protested weakly, but my voice had no power. He didn't say anything, just held me tighter, and then slowly lowered his head, his lips getting closer and closer to mine. At that moment, my mind went blank, and all my sense of reason and morality were thrown to the wind. When his lips finally touched mine, I completely gave in and responded to his kiss. The kiss seemed to last an eternity, and when we finally parted, I came back to reality and realized what I had just done. I looked at Tom in horror, my eyes filled with remorse and panic. I have to go," I stammered, turning around and fleeing the bookstore. When I got home, I slumped onto the sofa and tears flowed uncontrollably down my face. I couldn't believe I had betrayed my husband Jack, and I felt a sense of guilt and pain that was overwhelming. Even so, I couldn't deny that the kiss I had just shared with Tom had given me a sense of passion and happiness that I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't know how to deal with it all, and where to go from here, and I was left struggling alone in pain and confusion. Ever since that inappropriate intimate encounter with Tom in the bookstore, I have been like a person who has lost their soul. On the surface, I try to maintain the normal order of life, going to work, cooking, and communicating with Jack as usual, but inside, I am like a stormy sea that is difficult to calm. I am always worried that Jack will discover my secret, and every eye contact and simple conversation makes me nervous. Jack didn't seem to notice my unusual behavior right away, and for the first few days, our lives continued as normal. However, in the end, a lie will always be a lie, and my unusual behavior gradually caught his attention. That night, I was preparing dinner in the kitchen when Jack came in as usual to help me. As he washed the vegetables, he casually asked, "Ellie, is there something on your mind lately? You don't seem quite right." My hands trembled so violently that I almost dropped the knife in my hand. I forced myself to remain calm and forced a smile. "No, I'm just a little tired from work lately. Don't worry about it." Jack didn't say anything, but gave me a deep look that seemed to hide a hint of doubt. In the following days, Jack began to deliberately or inadvertently keep an eye on my whereabouts. After I came home from work, he would ask me, seemingly casually, what I had done that day and who I had been with. Sometimes, he would secretly check my phone. Although I deleted the chat history with Tom in time, some clues were inevitable. Once, after chatting with Tom on WeChat, I forgot to log out completely due to the rush. Jack picked up my phone while I was in the shower. When I came out, I saw him sitting on the sofa with a terrible scowl on his face. My heart sank. "Ellie, who is this, Tom?" Jack's voice was cold and devoid of emotion. He held the phone in front of me, and it was the screen where I had been chatting with Tom. Although I had deleted most of the sensitive content, some ambiguous words had still been seen by him. I felt my legs weaken and I almost couldn't stand. I opened my mouth to explain, but found I couldn't say a word. Jack's eyes were full of anger and disappointment. He stood up, threw the phone on the sofa, and said, "You'd better give me a reasonable explanation." Then he turned and walked into the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. I stood there in a daze, tears once again blurring my vision. I knew that my secret had finally been discovered and that a huge storm was about to hit our family. I didn't know how to explain it to Jack or whether our marriage could continue. I felt so scared and helpless that I could only cry silently in the living room, praying that this was all just a nightmare and that I could wake up soon. In the living room, I cried alone for a long time. My tears soaked my face, but my fear and guilt did not diminish at all. I knew I couldn't keep avoiding it like this. I took a few deep breaths to try to calm myself down and then slowly walked towards the bedroom. When I pushed open the bedroom door, I saw Jack sitting with his back to me, looking so lonely and desolate as he sat by the bed. I called out to him softly, "Jack." My voice was a little hoarse from crying. He didn't turn around, but said coldly, "Go ahead. What exactly is your relationship?" I walked over to him, sat down, and intertwined my hands tightly, my fingers turning white from the force. I knew that at this point, there was no longer any way to hide, so I gathered my courage and told him everything about our reunion with Tom and the growing affection between us. I told him that our chance encounter at the coffee shop was like a stone dropped into a calm lake, sending ripples through my heart. Every meeting and conversation with Tom reminded me of the good times in college, and the passions and dreams I had forgotten in the corners of time were rekindled. I admitted that in the process of spending time with Tom, I gradually lost myself and did things that betrayed him. Jack listened quietly, never interrupting me. When I had finished, he finally turned his head and looked at me, his eyes full of pain and anger. "Do you know what you've done? We've been married for so many years, and I always thought our relationship was strong. But you," his voice trembled a little, "I trusted you so much. How could you do this to me?" I lowered my head, afraid to look him in the eye. "Jack, I know I was wrong. I really regret it. I never thought it would turn out like this. I just got confused for a moment." I tried to explain, but these words sounded so pale and weak at this moment. Jack stood up and paced back and forth in the room. "So what are you going to do now? Continue with that, Tom? Our marriage, our feelings over the years, you're just going to give up like this?" His words were full of questions and a hint of expectation, as if he hoped I could give him a satisfactory answer. I hurriedly took his hand. "No, Jack, I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose this family. I have already decided to sever ties with Tom. The person I love is you. I was just confused for a moment. Please forgive me. Give me a chance. I will prove with my actions that I will correct myself." Jack looked at me, his eyes full of struggle. After a long time, he gently shook off my hand. "I need time. I can't forgive you right now." After saying that, he turned his back again. I knew that his heart had been deeply hurt by me and that it would not be easy to get his forgiveness. I silently walked out of the bedroom, returned to the living room, sat on the sofa, and my heart was filled with despair. This home, which was once so warm, is now teetering because of my mistake. I don't know what the future will hold. I just hope that time can slowly heal the pain in Jack's heart and get our lives back on track. Since I confessed everything to Jack, the atmosphere at home has become extremely oppressive. Jack is always cold and indifferent to me. Apart from necessary communication, he almost no longer initiates conversations with me. I can feel his inner pain and disappointment in me, which makes me live in deep self-reproach and guilt every day. Meanwhile, Tom also noticed my changes. He began to send me frequent messages and calls, asking what had happened to me. I always made up excuses to avoid him, but he didn't give up easily. One night, I was sitting in the living room, watching TV but not really paying attention to what was on the screen, when Tom's phone rang again. I hesitated for a moment, but then picked up the phone. "Ellie, what's wrong with you lately? Why are you always avoiding me?" Tom's voice sounded a little anxious. I took a deep breath. "Tom, we can't go on like this anymore. I've decided to return to my family and make a good life with Jack." There was silence on the other end of the line for a while, and then came Tom's anxious voice. "Ellie, you can't do this to me. Our relationship is real. Do you want to give up our love for a man who has already given up on you?" Tom's words made my heart ache. I remembered the good times I had with him, the passion and happiness I hadn't felt with Jack for a long time. But when I thought about Jack, about all the good times we had had together, and about the hurt I had caused him, I felt that I couldn't make the same mistake twice. "Tom, I know you are good to me, but I am married after all. I can't be so selfish. I hope you can find someone who really suits you and live a happy life." I tried hard to keep my voice calm. But Tom refused to give up. "Ellie, you come with me. Leave this place that makes you unhappy. Let's go to a new city and start over." His proposal plunged me into a deeper struggle of pain. On the one hand, there was the husband I once loved deeply and this home that was riddled with problems, but that I still cherished. I longed for Jack's forgiveness, to repair our marriage and regain the peace and happiness we once had. On the other hand, there was Tom, who made me rediscover my passion and self. His love was warm and direct, and it made me feel a sense of excitement that I had long forgotten. In the following days, I was distracted all day long. I couldn't concentrate at work, and when I returned home after work, I faced Jack's indifference, and my heart was filled with endless pain. I often sat alone by the window, looking out at the street, and thinking about my future. I knew that I had to make a decision, no matter how difficult it was. Every time I think about completely breaking off ties with Tom, my heart aches, but if I choose to stay with Tom, I can't face my conscience and can't bear the consequences of leaving Jack and this family. In the midst of this painful choice, I feel as if I'm in a dark abyss, unable to find a glimmer of light. I don't know which way to go and can only wait for fate to decide in the midst of endless conflict and pain. In the midst of this endless pain and confusion, the days passed one after the other, and every minute and every second was an ordeal for me. Jack's indifference was like a cold knife, constantly piercing my heart, while Tom's persistent pursuit drove me deeper and deeper into the whirlpool of emotions. Finally, one quiet night, I was sitting alone in the dark living room, and memories flooded back. I remembered the first time I met Jack, the butterflies I felt, the warm times we spent together, his attentive care when I was sick, and his unwavering support when times got tough. Those memories, like precious gems, shone warmly in my heart. I realized that my love for Jack had never gone away. It had just been ignored in the dullness of everyday life. As for Tom, although he brings passion and novelty into my life, it is based on betrayal. I cannot abandon my family and responsibilities because of a momentary impulse. I know that true happiness does not lie in the pursuit of fleeting excitement, but in mutual support and understanding in a life of simplicity. The next day, I summoned up the courage to call Tom again. "Tom, I've thought it over. I can't go with you. I want to stay with Jack and try to repair our marriage." I tried to sound firm but calm. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Tom's voice came, slightly choked with emotion. "Ellie, I really love you. I don't understand why we can't be together." My heart ached, but I forced back the tears and said, "Tom, our relationship has been wrong from the start. I can't go on making mistakes, and I hope you can understand. You will meet someone better and live a truly happy life." After I hung up the phone, tears flowed uncontrollably. Afterwards, I began to work hard to repair my relationship with Jack. Every day, I carefully prepared his favorite meals and took the initiative to take on more household chores. I also tried to communicate with him and listen to his thoughts and feelings. Although he was still very cold at first, I didn't give up. I knew that it would take time and patience to regain his trust and love. One day, Jack was having a hard time at work and was in a bad mood. I quietly stayed by his side, brewed him a cup of hot tea, and listened to him vent about his troubles at work. At that moment, I saw a slight loosening of the indifference in his eyes. As time passed, our communication gradually increased. Although it is not yet completely back to the way it was, I can feel that our relationship is slowly improving. I know that the road ahead is still long, and the wounds between Jack and I cannot be healed overnight. But I will prove my love for him and my determination to make amends with my actions. I believe that as long as we don't give up on each other, one day our family will once again be full of warmth and happiness. After I decided to return to my family and work hard to repair my relationship with Jack, life slowly moved on in a seemingly calm but surging manner. Although Jack's attitude towards me has eased, I know that the shadow of the past hurt still exists in his heart, and it is not easy to completely erase it. In order to get our lives back on track, I not only paid more attention to the trivial matters of life, but also began to try and find new hobbies to do together with Jack. I remembered Jack once mentioning an interest in photography, so I secretly bought an entry-level camera and suggested one weekend afternoon that we go out into the countryside to take some photos together. Jack looked at the camera in my hands, a hint of surprise in his eyes, before giving a small nod. We drove to a forest park in the countryside. Sunlight filtered through the leaves and created patches of light and shadow on the ground. Jack held the camera, intently searching for the right angle, while I followed behind him, giving him little tips from time to time. As we talked more and more, our conversation gradually became more relaxed, from photography techniques to impressions of the forest. Jack would occasionally smile at me, and that smile made me feel incredibly warm, as if I could see hope for us to start over. After returning home, we sat together in front of the computer, selecting and processing the photos we had taken. Jack patiently taught me how to use the image processing software, and I studied hard, filled with joy. At that moment, I felt like we were back to the sweet times when we were first in love, and the distance between us was closing little by little. In addition to cultivating a new hobby, I also paid more attention to emotional communication with Jack. Every night, we would sit on the sofa and share our experiences and feelings of the day. Sometimes Jack would talk about the stress at work, and I would listen carefully and offer encouragement and support. I would also confide in him about my trepidation and unease in the process of repairing the relationship, and he would gently comfort me. Over time, our trust deepened. Jack began to take the initiative to discuss family matters with me, such as planning the next trip or discussing how to rearrange the room. These seemingly ordinary little things are incredibly precious to me, and they make me feel that our marriage is slowly coming back to life. However, I also know that the impact of past mistakes cannot be completely erased. Occasionally, in the quiet of the night, I still think about my experience with Tom, and feelings of guilt and self-blame well up in my heart. But I also understand that I cannot keep living in the shadow of the past. I need to cherish the happiness in front of me and work hard to make our family even better. Now, Jack and I have greatly improved our lives. We have experienced storms together and have come to understand the importance of each other. The road ahead may still have twists and turns, but I believe that as long as we work together, understand each other, and tolerate each other, we will be able to create our own happy life and fill our home with laughter again. Thanks to the joint efforts of Jack and me, life seems to have returned to normal, and the house is filled with our laughter again. But I know that once something is broken, even if it is carefully mended, it will always bear the mark of the past. As time passed, Jack and I gradually stabilized our relationship, and our lives got back on track. We would go to the market together on weekend mornings to select fresh ingredients, and then cook a hearty lunch together when we got home. We would also snuggle up on the sofa on a leisurely evening to watch a heartwarming movie. However, in some fleeting moments, I could still catch a glimpse of the complex expression in Jack's eyes, which contained a trace of unspeakable pain. Once, we went to a party with friends. At the party, everyone talked about their love experiences and marriage stories. A friend jokingly asked how Jack and I met and got to know each other. Jack smiled as he told our past, but when his gaze swept over me, I keenly sensed a hint of hesitation in his eyes. At that moment, my heart sank, and I realized that the mistakes of the past were still following us around, casting shadows in our lives from time to time. When I got home, I lay in bed and looked at the ceiling, my thoughts racing. I thought about my relationship with Tom, a memory that would never fade from my life. Although I had completely let Tom go and devoted myself to my marriage with Jack, the hurt from that experience had become an invisible chasm between Jack and me. I tried to fill the gap with more love and care, but I knew that some regrets could not be made up for. The trust between Jack and I, although gradually recovering, could never reach the level of unreservedness it once had. We have become more cautious in life, and our interactions with each other have become more deliberately cautious. This cautious life makes me feel tired, but there is nothing I can do. I can only silently pray in my heart that time can slowly heal our wounds. I began to cherish every moment I spent with Jack, trying to let him feel my love and loyalty. One peaceful afternoon, Jack and I sat in the rocking chair in the courtyard, the sun gently shining on us. Jack suddenly took my hand and said softly, "Ellie, I know we are both trying to forget the past and start over. Although some regrets are unavoidable, I believe that as long as we are together, there is hope for the future." I looked at him, my eyes full of emotion and guilt, and tightly returned his handshake. Yes, there is hope for the future. Although the mistakes we made in the past have brought us irreparable regrets, I believe that as long as we have love in our hearts and are willing to face the challenges of life together, we can still find our own happiness in the long river of time. It is just that this happiness will carry the pain of the past and become a unique mark in our lives.